My dear friends on the dais and in the audience, my dear children, good morning to all of you. Let me begin by congratulating all of you who have been participating in this unique initiative of Agastya, the Anveshana, bringing students from the engineering colleges as well as in the high school students. Well, it does say something when you have to bring them together. They should have been together all along. Okay? But anyway, you will agree with me that we are all living in a very highly technologically driven world. Erin talked about the cell phone. That's a classic example of the changes brought about by the new technology in communication technologies. We have seen it in other sectors, in travel, in healthcare, in education, everywhere. Every sector is today dominated by technology. 50 years before, when I was of your age, story was very different. And you will also agree with me that these changes have been brought about by the new discoveries in science. It is science which is the platform on which all technologies of today stand on. And 20th century is referred to as the century of scientific discoveries in almost all platforms. We wonder who was responsible for this. Who are these people who made these discoveries, which are changing the way in which we live today? At my times, it used to be thought a scientist is usually an old man in shabby clothes, long beards, no hair in the head, and if it is there, it is highly shriveled and highly forgetful. This is the image of the scientist we all used to have, and that you may remember even the great Einstein was fitting exactly into this definition of a scientist. Today's students have a slightly different picture of a scientist. He comes in a nice suit. At best, he will remove his tie to show that he is not the normal crowd. He is different. They are not forgetful. They know exactly what they do, why they do it, and where are the business opportunities. Many of the Silicon Valley businesses are started by scientists who had a new invention, and then they saw a potential, and they made use of the potential. So it's a different picture of a scientist today, 50 years down the line. But if you really talk about who is a scientist, both these definitions talk about the exterior of the scientist. It doesn't talk about the scientist himself. It's his dress, his hair, combing, and things like that. Number one, who is a scientist? And number two is, what are his distinguishing features? What makes him a scientist, a good scientist? Right? In my view, scientist is the one who looks at things, whatever it is, anything around him, looks at it. I try to understand why a certain thing behaves the way in which it behaves. Understand nature, understand things around him. And then he asks the question, if I understand why it behaves the way in which it behaves, can I make use of it in some way for my own good, for my day-to-day living? Otherwise, we understand nature. Understanding nature is the fundamental starting point of all scientists' cravings. That's what they want to do. But who is a good scientist? Who makes a good scientist? Huh? We have been asking ourselves, I've been asking myself, who is the best scientist? Invariably, the answer which we come to is, the best scientist in the world is the newborn baby. He's just born 2 hours before. Right? He has not learnt any language. He or she has not learnt any language. Doesn't know anybody. Doesn't know how to talk. Doesn't understand what you say. But what they learn in 24 hours is something we all cannot do in maybe a month's time. Their capacity to learn by just looking at and learning, picking up out of that is unbelievable. So the best scientist today is the one who understands things without being constrained by what tools he has in his mind. Whether it is a language tool or an equipment, it doesn't matter. Tools are secondary. It is a capacity to observe. In fact, I was amused to read somewhere, some children, if you leave them, they start crying in 10 minutes. And invariably, the mother will say he or she is hungry, so try to feed. But then after the stomach is full, also continues to cry. Then you take him to a doctor. Doctor will say maybe there is some colic pain, gas, you give something or other and try to control the child's crying. But in one instance, it was written that the child is not crying because he or she is hungry. Child is not crying because he has some discomfort in the stomach or somewhere or some other part of the country. He is bored. He cannot change his position. You leave him there and he looks at the ceiling, looks at something which is there, and then after 10 minutes he is bored. He wants to see something else, but it is not there. So what they say, you simply turn the child around, they will stop crying. This is one of the symptoms of gifted children, which we are working together. My Nias and Agastya are partners in the program of gifted children. And one of the early symptoms of a gifted child is they cry for unknown reasons. And they stop crying when they change their positions. This is a clear symptom of that the capacity to learn is very high and they get bored very fast. Right? So the best child or the best scientist is the young child. Now, unfortunately, the more advanced is our educational system, more it ruins that child. Because starting from the age 2-3, the parents start telling, hey, don't do that. Don't do this. This is not good for you. You do this. This is good for you. By the time he comes to 10th standard, they even start telling him, don't do physics, it has no market value. But go and do computer engineering. And if you can't do computer engineering, you do maybe aircraft maintenance, something like that. The parents start telling the child what is good, what is not good. And you don't allow him to think for himself. And then by the time you come to the college, this exercise is complete. Okay, so they don't know what to do. So they will say what the parents say or what the neighboring boy says or the parents of the neighboring boy say, and then they say this is what we want to do. And we have seen many such examples, children who have topped in the International Mathematics Olympiad go and stand in line to get admission in IIT's computer science. Why computer science? Then I can get MS admission easy. So first thing they learn in IIT is to fill the form for GRE. Right? Then you go to MS. And then when you go to MS, why don't you go for a PhD? Then, no. There is more money in one of the corporate houses, or start your own entrepreneurship. Whatever I have learned is good enough to make money. Let me make money first. I'll learn later. So net result is the number of people who go for research is dwindling. It's dwindling even in the United States. It has dwindled drastically in this country. The number of computer science PhDs in this country is at best 2 digits. In a country which claims to be a leader in software technology and computer-related things. So this is something which worries all of us. And this is where Agastya comes into the picture. You don't tell the child what it must do. You tell the child how to observe, how to conclude something out of it, how to move to the next move forward first. And the engineering college students have a definite advantage. They can fabricate things. They are slightly more experienced in doing things. The youngsters have an idea, but they don't know how to go about. And you bring them together. Now, bring them together in the first meeting will be to do something. But over a period of time, maybe in the next meeting of Anveshana or 5 meetings afterwards, he'll say, tell me, what are you trying to solve? Why are you doing what you are doing? So what we need to cultivate among the youngsters and among the older people also, first to identify the problems around you, which are looking for solutions. And then you say, is there something which you know which can solve this problem? It could be energy related, it could be water related, it could be healthcare, it could be anything. Then you try to address that problem. In the process, if you solve a problem, of course you will be rewarded for doing that. You don't have to put reward as the number one criterion for driving you to do something, but you put a problem solving, a problem which is faced by all of us and which needs to be solved, and we find a solution which is based on what we already know and what other people know in the literature, and solve it. In the process, if I become a millionaire, it is good. If I become a billionaire, it is even better. But making millionaire or billionaire is not the driving force. It can never take you far. So this is a message which we need to do, and I'm sure that events like Anveshna will introduce that kind of culture into the youngsters today, and I wish you all success in this meeting. Thank you very much.